The strangest things Jesus did. Most historical scholars agree that Jesus Christ existed. Whether or not he was the Son of God and was capable of hosting awesome dinner parties on a super low budget, we may never know. But there is evidence to suggest that a significant number of J-Dog's actions described in the Bible had some basis in reality. These events may have been exaggerated, and they've certainly been eulogized over, but some might actually have taken place. And if that's true, then I wonder if any of the following stories were real as we investigate some of the strangest things Jesus did. Number 5. Promoted self-harm to children. In Matthew 18, Jesus calls a little kid to his side and begins to make a point about being as humble as children. But things took a dark turn when he suggests that anyone who dissuades a child from believing in him should be thrown into the sea with a millstone around their neck. And it gets worse. During a diatribe about the evils of sin, Jesus states, while standing next to the child, that if part of your body causes you to sin, you should remove it. Stolen a bag of coins with your right hand? Chop it off. Coveted thy neighbor's ox with your eyes? Gouge them out. Jesus says it would be better to live your life maimed than to be cast into the fires of eternal hell with 2 hands and 2 feet. And you know what? I'm not going to argue with that. But this speech is a little beyond PG considering your audience, pal. What if this poor little kid had just, discovered himself that morning? He'd have gone home and, bye-bye sin limbs. I guess that's where all the eunuchs came from. Number 4. He went on a whipping spree. Jesus was a forgiving man, a tolerant man, and a mild-tempered man. Unless you start selling stuff in his dad's house, then that boy will straight up whip you. At the time of the Jewish Passover, Jesus went to Jerusalem's temple courts only to discover that moneylenders and animal sellers were operating within. In John 2, he was said to have made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Does that sound a little weird to you, or is it just me? Admittedly, these sellers were taking advantage of foreign worshipers who needed animals in local currency, and they were doing it in a place of worship. So Jazzy C's anger is entirely understandable. But did he really need to throw tables over and start whipping people? Who does he think he is? R. Kelly? Number 3. He pokes your wounds. Jesus considered himself a faith healer. If he touched you and you were blind, the miracle of sight would be yours. If you had leprosy, bam, a quick fondle from Jesus and you're good. But if these tales were based on real-life events, then that means the guy Jesus was based on went around stroking sick people in places they didn't want to be stroked. Healing the ear of the servant is one of Jesus' most famous miracles, when a man known as Malchus had his ear sliced off by one of Jay Fresh's followers. Jesus obviously felt bad that one of his crew had represented him in such a whack manner. So to make amends, he touched the man's ear stump and healed his wound. Apparently. I wonder how that went down, though. Because out of all the Gospels which record this incident, only Luke claims the ear was healed. Basically what happened is that Jesus saw someone's severed ear and thought, cool, I want to touch that. So he did, and then made up a healing excuse to get himself out of it. This is probably what happened with the lepers, the crippled, the blind man, and the withered hand guy too. I guess Jesus just loved to touch gross people. Number 2. Never had dinner with family. Jesus' old man was absent for much of his life. When he was around, he was downright abusive. If I let a bunch of strangers murder my kid and throw his corpse into a cave, you'd better believe I'm losing custody. It's one rule for God and another for the rest of us. With that in mind, it makes sense as to why Jesus wasn't a fan of family dinners. But according to Luke 14, he also hated having friends around or even mild acquaintances, and he believed that everyone should follow his lead on this. According to GZC, the only reason people invite friends, relatives, or neighbors over for dinner is because they think they'll return the favor. Instead, he believed his followers should invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind over for some chow, because they cannot repay you, and you will instead be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So, let's get this straight. The only reason he's having hobos and cripples round for lunch is so he can eventually become a zombie. That's totally not woke, Jesus. Number 1, he spat on blind people. Is it any wonder that the second coming of Christ hasn't happened yet if he's going to poke lepers and spit at the blind when he gets here? We'd kick his ass in a second. But yes, I'm afraid this story is true. Jesus did genuinely spit at blind people. He gobbed one up, savored the flavor, and hocked a loogie right in the eyes of those who could not see. He was also known to spit on the ground so he could mix his spit with mud before mixing this concoction and rubbing that in blind folks' eyes too. That's nasty, Jesus. Why would you do that? Well, to be fair to J. Cry, this wasn't considered a particularly weird thing to do at the time. Old-timey doctors had a tradition of spitting on their patients, and it is only recently that spitting in general has become unacceptable. The Maasai tribes of Africa even spit at each other today as a formal greeting. So I guess this is one weird thing we can let Jesus off the hook for. Except not really, because remember, Jesus claimed he could heal people with a touch of his hand. So if that's the case, then what's all the spitting for? Perhaps we'll find out if we investigate fewer myths and more about the man himself, which is what we've done in our bonus video, The Real Jesus, which you can watch on our Patreon page at patreon.com/strangemysteries. For a $2 a month pledge, which you can cancel at any time, you'll get to watch this and all of our bonus content, which goes deeper and darker into every topic than YouTube allows. If you don't want to donate, then that's
bullshit. We know you wanted more. Strange Mysteries on YouTube and our Patreon bonus videos weren't enough to quench your search for truth, to give you that sense of awe and wonder again, to go past what you thought was the end, to give you the answers you seek, but which only lead to more questions. That's why we just upped the stakes. Chemicals of reality. Reality, consciousness, brains. What else is there? Ask yourself that question. Perhaps that's all there really is, but perhaps everything else is found within a place where these ideas, these things, overlap. Some thing, some place that is undefinable. To many people, altering certain chemicals in their brains produces what they would simply call hallucinations. In fact, what we're going to discuss specifically used to be called the businessman's trip, as one could enjoy it. Come down and put your pants back on in the time it takes to eat lunch. It wasn't taken seriously, well, unless of course you started digging. And some people, including us, did. Already though, to many people, this chemical is special amongst others. Very special. To them, it represents something more meaningful and incredible, as if it's the gateway to the next level of consciousness. The ticket to a higher reality barely explored by most humans. It is the entry point to a new reality, visited by only a select few, whose minds have become enlightened through the use of this exotic substance. For this reason, it's commonly referred to as the spirit molecule. But is its reputation as a mystical mind-opener deserved? Or is it, and everything it represents, just a load of bullshit? We look at, investigate, and dive deeply into nearly all available research regarding this question, from nearly every angle feasible. And in the course of doing so, stumble upon unexplainable patterns, correlations, and neurological evidence for a reality existing beyond this one. Watch this hour-long Strange Mysteries premium video, Chemicals of Reality, as well as many more to come by becoming an elite premium member of our Patreon at patreon.com/strangemysteries.